Donald got up, put on his overcoat and cap, and went to the door. "May your sleep be long and sweet, men," he said, laughing softly, "and as for the waking, 'twill be betwixt you and me." With that, he untied Neil's horse, climbed into Neil's sleigh, and tucked Neil's buffalo robe about him. "Now, Bess, old girl, do your bonniest," he said. "There's more than you know hangs on your speed. If the Campbell wakes too soon, Black Dan could show you a pair of clean heels for all your good start. On, my girl." Brown Bess went over the ice like a deer, and Donald kept thinking of what he should say to Nancy, and more still of what she would say to him. Suppose he was mistaken. Suppose she said no. Neil would have a laugh on me then. Sure, he's sleeping well, and the snow is coming soon. There'll be a bonny swirl on the bay ere long. I hope no harm will come to the lad if he starts to cross. When he wakes he'll be in such a fine Highland temper that he'll never stop to think of danger. Well, Bess, old girl, here we are. Now, Donald Fraser, pluck up heart and play the man. Never flinch because a slip of a lass looks scornful at you out of the bonniest dark blue eyes on earth." But in spite of his bold words, Donald's heart was thumping as he drove into the Sherman yard. Nancy was there milking a cow by the stable door, but she stood up when she saw Donald coming. Oh, she was very beautiful. Her hair was like a skein of golden silk, and her eyes were as blue as the Gulf water when the sun breaks out after a storm. Donald felt more nervous than ever, but he knew he must make the most of his chance. He might not see Nancy alone again before Neil came. He caught her hand and stammered out, "Nan, lass, I love you. You may think 'tis a hasty wooing, but that's a story I can tell you later, maybe. I know well I'm not worthy of you, but if true love could make a man worthy, there'd be none before me. Will you have me, Nan?" Nancy didn't say she would have him. She just looked it, and Donald kissed her right there in the snow. The next morning, the storm was over. Donald knew Neil must be soon on his track. He did not want to make the Sherman house the scene of a quarrel, so he resolved to get away before the Campbell came. He persuaded Nancy to go with him to visit some friends in another settlement. As he brought Neil's sleigh up to the door, he saw a black speck far out on the bay and laughed. "Black Dan goes well, but he'll not be quick enough," he said. Half an hour later, Neil Campbell rushed into the Sherman kitchen, and oh, how angry he was! There was nobody there but Betty Sherman, and Betty was not afraid of him. She was never afraid of anybody. She was very handsome, with hair as brown as October nuts, and black eyes and crimson cheeks, and she had always been in love with Neil Campbell herself. "Good morning, Mr. Campbell," she said with a toss of her head. "It's early abroad you are, and on Black Dan no less. Was I mistaken in thinking that Donald Fraser said once that his favorite horse should never be backed by any man but him? But doubtless a fair exchange is no robbery, and Brown Bess is a good mare in her way." "Where is Donald Fraser?" said Neil, shaking his fist. "It's him I'm seeking, and it's him I will be finding. Where is he, Betty Sherman?" "Donald Fraser is far enough away by this time," mocked Betty. "He is a prudent fellow and has some quickness of wit under that sandy thatch of his. He came here last night at sunset with a horse and sleigh not his own, or lately gotten, and he asked Nan in the stable yard to marry him. Did a man ask me to marry him at the cow's side with a milking pail in my hand? It's a cold answer he'd get for his pains." But Nan thought differently, and they sat late together last night. 'Twas a bonny story Nan wakened me to hear when she came to bed, the story of a braw lover who set his secret out when the whiskey was above the wit, and then fell asleep while his rival was away to woo and win his lass. Did you ever hear a like story, Mr. Campbell? "Oh, yes," said Neil fiercely. "It is laughing at me over the countryside and telling that story that Donald Fraser will be doing, is it? But when I meet him, it is not laughing he will be doing. Oh, no, there will be another story to tell." "Now don't meddle with the man," cried Betty. "What a state to be in because one good-looking lass likes sandy hair and grey eyes better than Highland black and blue. You have not the spirit of a wren, Neil Campbell. Were I you, I would show Donald Fraser that I could woo and win a lass as speedily as any Lowlander of them all. That I would. There's many a girl would gladly say yes for your asking, and here stands one. Why not marry me, Neil Campbell? Folks say I'm as bonny as Nan, and I could love you as well as Nan loves her Donald. Aye, and 10 times better." What do you suppose that Campbell did? Why, just the thing he ought to have done. He took Betty at her word on the spot, and there was a double wedding soon after. And it is said that Neil and Betty were the happiest couple in the world, happier even than Donald and Nancy. So all was well because it ended well. The Story Girl curtsied until her silken skirts swept the floor. Then she flung herself in her chair and looked at Mr. Campbell, flushed, triumphant, daring. The story was old to us. It had once been published in a Charlottetown paper, and we had read it in Aunt Olivia's scrapbook where the Story Girl had learned it. But we had listened entranced. I have written down the bare words of the story as she told it, but I can never reproduce the charm and color and spirit she infused into it. It lived for us. Donald and Neil, Nancy and Betty were there in that room with us. We saw the flashes of expression on their faces. We heard their voices, angry or tender, mocking or merry, in lowland and highland accent. We realized all the mingled coquetry and feeling and defiance and archness in Betty Sherman's daring speech. We had even forgotten all about Mr. Campbell. That gentleman, in silence, took out his wallet, extracted a note therefrom, and handed it gravely to the Story Girl. "There are $5 for you," he said, "and your story was well worth it. You are a wonder. Some day you will make the world realize it. I've been about a bit and heard some good things, but I've never enjoyed anything more than that threadbare old story I heard in my cradle. And now, will you do me a favor?" "Of course," said the delighted Story Girl. "Recite the multiplication table for me," said Mr. Campbell. We stared. Well might Mr. Campbell be called eccentric. What on earth did he want the multiplication table recited for? Even the Story Girl was surprised, but she began promptly with twice 1 and went through it to 12 times 12. She repeated it simply, but her voice changed from one tone to another as each in succession grew tired. We had never dreamed that there was so much in the multiplication table. As she announced it, the fact that 3 times 3 was 9 was exquisitely ridiculous. 5 times 6 almost brought tears to our eyes. 8 times 7 was the most tragic and frightful thing ever heard of, and 12 times 12 rang like a trumpet call to victory. Mr. Campbell nodded his satisfaction. "I thought you could do it," he said. "The other day I found this statement in a book. Her voice would have made the multiplication table charming. I thought of it when I heard yours. I didn't believe it before, but I do now." Then he let us go. "You see," said the Story Girl as we went home, "you need never be afraid of people." "But we are not all Story Girls," said Cecily. That night we heard Felicity talking to Cecily in their room. "Mr. Campbell never noticed one of us except the Story Girl," she said. "But if I had put on my best dress as she did, maybe she wouldn't have taken all the attention." "Could you ever do what Betty Sherman did, do you suppose?" asked Cecily absently. "No, but I believe the Story Girl could," answered Felicity rather snappishly.